Hello, I'm Raj Chengappa from India Today and your host for Nothing But the Truth. Every week, we will deal with key issues of concern and bring you perspectives and clarity as to why these matter to you and the one clear truth that emerges. Most of us have cell phones and they are truly smart. Earlier, they used to just enable voice communication, but today they perform a whole host of duties almost like a mini computer in your hand. You can take calls or pass messages or type messages and receive and a whole host of applications at any place, anytime, anywhere of your convenience. They are in fact your mobile offices that are there. And even as we speak and we think that this is truly advanced, there is a huge advancement going to happen for Indians in the next month or so. And it is called 5G, or the fifth generation network that will power your cell phones. So why is there so much excitement around 5G? And what is the way it could transform our lives? In this episode, we will deal with some of those simple questions and the ones that you really need to know. So let's get our fundas right. What is 5G? 5G is simply the fifth generation network. Before this, there were four others, and it began way back in 1979 or so, when the first generation of cell phones came with the network, and there you could receive only voice calls. It would take 20 years for the second generation or 2G to come, and what that did was, apart from enhancing voice calls, also enabled you to send out SMS messages. Now, this could, at that time, was revolutionary, but here it's passé. We do it all the time. In fact, we don't do SMSs, we do WhatsApp and we do a whole other things. But at that time, there was a dramatic change that happened. The third generation of 3G went even further. For the first time, you were able to do video streaming. Now, that was a novelty. Earlier, you had only voice or digital messages. Now you could do things with it that you could never do before. And very important, this was the time that global roaming was introduced. So if you were in India and you had a cell phone, you could take it abroad and you could receive calls and also make calls there. Of course, it came at a heavy cost, and over a period of time, that cost is reduced. And in fact, telecom companies offer packages when you go abroad that give you for 10 days or 30 days a fairly reasonable rate. Now that came around 2001. The next big leap was 4G, or the fourth generation, which we are all currently using if you had smartphones that are doing so. And they enhanced whatever features that 3G did, but most importantly, the speed was doubled by as much as 15 times than what 3G had. And now comes 5G. And 5G means 10 times the speed of 4G. Now, just to put that into context, if you had, say, a 2 or 3 hour movie that you wanted to watch in a hurry, normally if you did it right now, or you're waiting in an airport and you wanted to see it, it would take you 20 minutes and you'd say, forget it, I'll just sit and sleep in the aircraft. Today, if you had to, and you had 5G enabled systems, you could do that entire movie, the 3-hour movie, in less than 2 minutes. That's the speed you're talking about. The second thing you're talking on 5G is the latency factor is far less. When you say latency, when you send out a call, you can pick it up almost immediately. And we do have a lot of call drops there, and 5G should eliminate all these problems. To find out how 5G would transform our lives, I spoke to Ashwini Vaishnav, the Union Minister for Communications, who oversees the telecom ministry, and also the 5G auction, spectrum auction that happened recently. Vaishnav is one of the most erudite and learned ministers of the Modi government, and he said he saw two major areas that 5G could revolutionize the way we live, and this was in health and education. Now take health, and this is all simplified. With 5G, you could have a diagnosis where over video, you could consult your clinician or your doctor in real time. And he could see the kind of problems you had Of course, these ailments should not require a personal presence, and if they don't, consultation will be instantaneous without you having to visit, and not only save time but money in doing so. There are various other health services that it could provide, including linking ambulances and real-time communication that could be communicated to the hospital whenever you need one, and these will begin to take place pretty soon in the country. The other area is education, where we saw that during COVID, there was a huge emphasis towards digital education. Now, what does 5G do? It will enhance the entire experience because the bandwidth is large. Videos, there will be no time lag, there will be, they could put heavy files onto it, and the learning experience between the teacher and the student is expected to be enhanced considerably. The other area that experts talk about, is in the entire drone sector. We have had a lot of drones coming into the country. They're doing a lot of jobs that are already there. This will be multiplied manyfold. Among them is agriculture. The drones could control how much spray of pesticides you put, what would be the fertilizers that you could put, as well as irrigation in terms of water that you're distributing. And here you could actually calculate with these drones available and with 5G networks where exactly the soil is parched, how much water does it need, and supply that water. So you save water and you also save a lot of the environment that goes with it by preventing wastage of water. There are a whole range of areas apart from health and education and agriculture that 5G would impact. Now let's take a look at businesses. 5G would enable a businessman, say in Delhi, a small industry, where he wants to show a product to someone in the US, he could do it real time and with the clarity that is required for such decisions, and deals could be struck. When it comes to the transport sector, you could see a revolution in terms of not only fast tags that are there, which enable you to cross various barriers, particularly the toll gates and others with speed, but also the introduction of driverless cars and the efficiency and the safety that is required for it to perform, and 5G network will enable that. In the banking sector, you could have one-tap payments. Right now, you go through a series of stages, but because 5G has the kind of power that it has, it will be swift, and you will be able to transact your various cash issues or anything that you want to do with really top speed. So 5G, in fact, is one of the most super fast networks that you would get. So having painted this exciting picture of 5G, I'm sure you're waiting to know when it will make its appearance in India. Not far away. The minister that I spoke to said he expects a lot of the services to happen in October itself. A lot of telecom companies are already announcing that by independence, the 70th year of independence, they would start some of their services. So it's right there. When it comes to whether you could afford a 5G enabled system and are there enough around, that is something that the industry will have to sort out, because so far we have most of the sets 4G enabled and only the new sets, 30% of the new sets are 5G enabled. They are priced around 15,000, the cheapest of them, and can go very, very high in terms of price depending on the features they have. But the hope is that given the volumes that we have, there are almost 800 million smartphones in this country, the prices of that will come down to 10,000. That will be reasonable for a lot of people who could afford to do 5G. Now, is it going to be costly to your monthly bills that you pay? The tariff rates. Experts say that given the fact that the Indian tariff rates are already pretty low as compared to international rates, and you can experience that if you go abroad, Indian phones are far, far cheaper. You get a lot more data band, you get a lot more call services that are there, and including your internet is far cheaper than anywhere else in the world. And they expect that 5G costs too will be at that level itself. While 5G has a host of benefits, serious concerns have been raised about the safety of the networks as well as security. Let's deal with the safety issue, and there has been globally concern that the electromagnetic field radiation that the networks put out could be harmful to humans. There, in fact, has been a major case that was put by a famous actress in India about the concern she had on 5G. That case was dismissed. When I asked the minister, Mr. Vaishnav, and he said, look, if the global standard of EMF or electromagnetic field radiations is about 100, India's level is 10 at the moment. So our environment, our network environment is safe. There's nothing to worry about. In fact, he says we can increase it a little more because by keeping it low, we actually affect the quality of our telecom services. The second question is about safety, and there are two areas of concern. One was many US airlines complained that the 5G network that were installed in various airports could interfere with their aircraft equipment and cause serious problems. When I asked the minister this question, Mr. Vaishnav, he said that that was peculiar to certain US airports because the 5G spectrum and the ones that they use for aircraft communication was fairly close. But in India and in many other countries, these two are separate and there should be no threat of that problem for our safety while we fly. The other major concern in terms of security is that any country that we buy the network, the 5G network from, will have access to all our communication and our secrets, and that is a major worry, particularly in the defense and other sectors. So, in fact, the Chinese company Huawei that had the cheapest 5G was shunned by the US for these reasons, and India also had its concerns. So what India did was that under the Prime Minister's Atmanirbhar program that he had announced a couple of years ago, Mr. Narendra Modi, they had put 5G network development as one of the top priorities. And Mr. Vaishnav had good news that the Center for Development of Telematics, the government-owned institution, research institution, had in these years, along with a whole host of private entrepreneurs, created an indigenously built 5G network and all the network management systems that is now being tested, which means very shortly, this would be a superb achievement because India will be one among a handful of countries that have this kind of technology. But in the meanwhile, the telecom companies like Reliance Jio, as well as Vodafone and others that will employ 5G who have bought spectrum, will import this equipment, but those manufacturers will have systems and structures that the Indian security agencies can monitor and ensure that there are no leaks that are happening on this front. The other concern is something we have all experienced. We have all had call drops, we have all had problems reaching our friends and family at the times that we need them most, and it is exasperating to say the least. So despite having 4G, we really never enjoyed the full flow of 4G as it should have been in terms of speed and connectivity. 5G, I asked the minister, would it suffer the same problem? And he gives 3 reasons as to why this shouldn't happen and the way they're going to sort it out. The first is in spectrum itself. If you didn't have the right amount of bandwidth for it, you would experience this. In the current auction that they have done, they have not only sold the 5G spectrum in its entirety, but they've ensured that there were gaps that were there earlier were also filled, and there shouldn't be a problem on that. The second problem is in terms of towers, the ones that you see, these towers that transmit the signals, and India has around 7 lakh towers. India needs double the number for 5G to be successful. What the government has done is that it has made the process of setting up towers far more easier. If earlier it took several months to do so, today it could take less than 5 to 10 minutes to have the tower permission granted. The third area is fiberization. Now in fiberization, the optical fibers needed to transmit the signals that have to be laid on the ground is critical for the functionality of the 5G network, particularly its quality. So far, India has 30% of its area covered with optical fiber networks. It needs to do almost 80% of that, and in a hurry. What the Modi government has done is under its Gati Shakti program, it has integrated all the various ministries, and among them is a suggestion and probably a plan that is going to be implemented soon, is that along railway lines, along highways, they create a public pipeline where a lot of these 5G network cables and others can be put easily. So therefore, you will speed up the entire process, and now that is under implementation. The good sign for 5G in India is that when the government opened the auctions for the spectrum, the 5G spectrum, the response was tremendous. They had expected anything between rupees 80,000 crores to rupees 1 lakh crores in terms of revenue, but the actual amount they got was rupees 1.5 lakh crores, and that's a very good beginning because it indicates that the telecom sector, which had been lagging behind and a lot of companies had faced losses, is in the process of turning around because the aggressive bidding showed that they mean business and they were back in business. Now, there are more than 70 countries that have 5G, and India would be the latest to be added to them. So get ready, get your phones ready, and get yourself 5G enabled and live like you are in a sci-fi. The kind of things that 5G promises is truly extraordinary, and we are all waiting to experience that particular feeling. Till then, thank you for listening to this episode of Nothing But the Truth, and I look forward to having you with me next week.